like the way this light is. Okay, let's just go on with it. So any application you're using right now contains a database. That's why understanding databases, understanding how to work with databases is very, very extremely important. And I think if you master if you master how to query efficiently or effectively a database, it gives you an advantage. It gives you a leg up over just anybody else who knows how to design a website. So we will refer to the architecture we used before, and we said, so this is an entire platform. We have the web version, we have the mobile app version, and then we have our backend. Now right here our API communicates to our database, and you want to understand what exactly is this database. So when our website or the mobile app is communicating with the backend, we use what we call TCP IP, and I can just write it here. Not TCP IP, oh my goodness. We use TCP to communicate. Let me just do this. And from an earlier class, if you remember, I told you computers talk to each other using different formats or using different channels. I'm trying to avoid the word methods because now it will confuse you. So computers talk to each other using TCP. They talk to each other using Bluetooth. Some use what do we call TCP, Bluetooth. We have UDP, and so on and so forth. So our website will communicate to the backend using TCP, and backend will communicate. The API will communicate to the backend using TCP, but it will not use the same language. When the client is sending a request, we are using HTTP methods: get, put, post, and all that. But when the API is communicating with the backend, it uses what we call SQL, which is what we'll look at in a second. So a database, let's take a step back. Let's go back to when we were creating a simple Python function. So right here, wait, I do have a folder here. Where is it? All right, here, databases. So right inside this folder, I'm going to create another folder. We'll call it databases. All right, and I'll open this in VS Code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very simple Python application, just a simple Python script. So I'll create a folder, a file, main.py. Inside main.py, I can just ask this AI to generate code for me. So I can say create a dictionary of foods, of like 30 foods, and create a function to randomly pick 3 foods from that dictionary. I'll hit enter. So we want to start from the very basics, sorry. And remember, I told you, if you want to understand anything fast in tech, in programming, first start with a why. Okay, why are we doing that? Why do we need a database? If at all we can just store our data here, why do we need a database? We start there. So here we have a dictionary of foods. The key here is just the index, and then we have the type of food here. So I'll just minimize this because it's eating up a lot of space. So I'll just minimize this, and then I'll look at the function. So pick random foods, and we are using random.sample. Then we are converting it into a list, and then we are getting the values. So and then we call the application. So I'll just come here. I'll say Python main.py, and so if I run main.py, I can see I'm getting I don't even know what that is. What is this? Ceviche, I don't know. Lasagna and kebab. If I run the code again, I'm getting a different food. If I run the code again, I'm getting a different option. Now, remember I told you, don't focus on what goes where, especially when you're writing code. AI is already good at that. Just focus on what exactly you want to accomplish, and try to look at the code and see if you can understand what's happening. So I'll accept this code here, but for example, I want to know what this list does here. So I can try and delete it. So I'll delete the list like so. You're very aggressive, my friend. So I'll delete the list, and then I run my code again. I see what the list does. Pick random foods, sample, population must be a sequence for dictionaries or sets, use sorted, whatever, blah, blah. So that method is very important. Now, if you look at our code, oh my goodness, what have I done? If you look at our code, we've started with a dictionary here, and then this is what you call a method. You see, sorry, this is a function. It's a built-in tool you use in Python to convert something into a list. That is just what's happening here. And then we have this, we are calling this method here, random sample. Yeah, we are calling this random method, and as you can see, we are importing it here. Now remember, from the previous class we spoke about modules, libraries, and whatnot. This is an example of an inbuilt module. We have not run any pip install. If you don't run any pip install, it means you're not installing any third-party libraries. Oh, the volume is low. My goodness. Why? Why? Hang on a minute. Okay. I don't understand why. Let me see. So is the volume still low, or is it okay? Okay, so let me experiment. I want to find out if I mute this one. Now let me know, is it okay or is it low? All right, it's okay. Okay. Let me just try to move it closer to my mouth. I don't know if it's because I've changed the whatever, but I was hoping it will still capture it, because I'm here like this. Anyway, yeah. Yes, so far, now remember what we also said when we were starting. We said the whole business of software engineering is storing data, manipulating data, and presenting that data to the user. Now, if you look at our architecture here, right here, we are presenting data. Right here, we are manipulating data, and this is where we are storing the data. So I can just do this so that we have a nice simple diagram. Okay, so let me just divide right here. Let me use that, and then we want to color it black, and then we'll also do this. All right, so the whole business of software engineering is storing data, or we can just say data storage. And then this is where we manipulate data, data manipulation, and then this is now where we have data presentation. Data presentation. All right, so we've looked at data presentation when we looked at the front end. We looked at data manipulation when we looked at the back end. Now we want to focus on data storage. Okay, so in your code, like what we've done right here, we've actually repeated the same steps. All right, so in this function we are manipulating and presenting that data. Oh, sorry, we are manipulating data here, and then this is where we are presenting that data. What you see here by print, that is how we are presenting the data, and our data storage is right here. So this solution works okay, but how if you have, for example, if you are Safaricom and you have 50 million users, you have to know who has what amount of money in their bank account. You cannot store 50 million users in your code. Like for example, right here, you see we are at line 33, okay? And the code is becoming, a little bit tedious to work with. So you cannot store all your users in your code. That is where the database aspect comes in. And we'll explore how we can replace this with an actual database, okay? So in computers, data can be stored in several formats. We can store data as JPEG, like normal downloaded files. You download something, you store it in your file manager. That is data storage. You can store data in a Word document. Okay, you can open a Word document. For example, this data right here. Let's just copy this. All right, and then so new Microsoft Word. I'm supposed to be inside databases. I'm not supposed to be where I am. So databases. So in here we can create a text document and say foods, which will be it's just a Word document containing a list of foods. Okay, so we can store our data here. We can store our data in an Excel in an Excel sheet or in an Excel spreadsheet. So right here I can say new Excel spreadsheet. Where is it? Excel worksheet, and then I'll say foods. Don't like that capital. Foods. And then inside foods, I can paste our foods. The data pasting the same size. Okay. All right. Okay. So as you can see, it's the same type of data. It's just a list of foods. Okay. It's a dictionary of foods with their indices with their index. Okay. And we've stored it in two different ways. What is the other way we can store data? We can store data in a text document. So I can come here and say new text document, and then I'll say foods, and then I'll paste my foods inside. All right, I'll save it. So we have the same type of data, the same quantity, the same amount of data stored in three different formats. Okay, which as normal users, this is how we store data in our computers. But when you're working with systems that have millions of records, these tools right here become ineffective. Okay, it's very tedious to work with Excel if it has 1 million records, leave alone 50 million records. There's also no kind of what you call relationships, and we'll look at that in a second, and so on and so forth. So that is why we need a database, because a database can scale. A database can contain as many as 50 million records. Like right now, you see companies like Safaricom, like banks. Okay, this earphone is giving me, it's making me straight. Anyway, so things like banks, ERPs, these things have millions. You would imagine how many records are in eCitizen or in any government software. Millions, if not, hundreds of thousands. So you cannot use these three methods. That is where a database comes in. Now, you can think of a database just a software you install on your computer, but instead of accessing it the normal way we do, like for example, if I want to open my foods database stored in Excel, I can just come here and double click this Excel. Now, what do I need to open an Excel document? I need Microsoft Excel. Okay. Let me just close it. What do I need to open the foods database but in document format? I need Microsoft Word. So I can just come here, I can open it like so, and I can see my data. The same applies to foods.txt. I will need a text editor to open it. So I can just double click on that, and my data works okay. Now we'll look at one major issue why we can't use this and that, but for now let's use this Excel document to sort of internalize what you're going to learn about on databases. So right here I have Excel, and if you've worked with Excel, actually I'm not very good at Excel, so if I say something that is wrong, if I say something false, just call me out, point it out, I'll appreciate. So in Excel, data is stored in a structured way. Okay, so let me just open another Excel document so that you can play with it. Let me open a blank worksheet, close that. All right, so in an Excel document, we have what we call rows. These are what we call rows, and sorry, not rows, these are what we call columns, and these are what we call rows. Okay, so if I say, for example, I want to store something in the first column on the first row, this is what I'm talking about. So I can store here the heading. I can say this is the name, this is the region, and this is the ingredients. Okay, ingredients, I don't know if that is how we pronounce ingredients. And then I can say something like what else do we have? Price or cost. Okay, and we're just trying to make our database. Now some people call data inside an Excel as a database. I think some people call a lot of things databases. Like somebody might say my database, but they're talking about a collection of songs they have on their computers. So just keep that in mind. So for example, here we have Githeri. Let me just change that to Githeri. Region, central, I don't know if that is true. Ingredients, it's beans, maize, and the price is 200. And right here we can include an ID. So I'll just say insert, and right here I'll say ID. This is ID1. I'll come here, I'll say ID2. We have rice, region, cost, for example, ingredients, it's rice, oil, water, and the price is something like 100. Let me use figures that make sense. So we'll replace this with like 50. And then we create another one. Let's say, for example, this is ugali. Ugali is common in Western, for example. What do you need to cook ugali? Maize flour, water, and the price is 20 shillings or dollars or whatever. So right here we have already created a sample database. Okay, this is something we can work with. We have the ID. The ID is what we call a primary key, because it is what helps you to identify that exact data that you want. For example, if I want you to tell me what are the ingredients of rice, what you need to do is you need to find the ID of rice. The ID of rice is 2. Now, using that ID, you can check all the other information available on that particular row. So this is what you call a primary key. It's just something that helps you identify a row in your database. This, like I've said, this is what you call columns. This is a column. These are rows. And this entire thing is what we call a table. Okay. This is just a table. Like a table is a collection of rows and columns, of related data, so to speak. So now again, you might ask me, okay, so why do we need a database? I mean, we've already created our table, we've already created our columns, our rows, our IDs. We can just work with this. Again, it's very it's very hard to work with, like a file. This is essentially a file. I can just come here and say save. Let me say foods db. Where do I want to save it? I want to save it in desktop. Databases. I want to save it here. So it's very tedious to work with this particular data set because Excel itself does not have the capabilities of an actual database. It cannot store a lot of records. I think Excel has a limit of how much data it can store, if I'm not wrong. For example, if you get to 15 GB, it starts to hang, it starts to misbehave. So that is why we can't use this. Now, there's another format of sort of like Excel we can use, which is very common. And if you will go into data analysis after this, you need to learn that format. So that format is called CSV, and I'll just open our foods DB here. And I'll go to file, I'll say save as. And I will say I want to save this food DB as CSV. So I'll change this to CSV. I'll change this to CSV. Yeah, right there. Save. Possible data loss. Save as. Okay, what's happening? I thought I've already saved as, yeah, and here we have our database as foodsdb.csv. Now pay attention to something interesting here. We have the same data in this one, foodsdb.xls. Let me just zoom in. I've just noticed so we have the same data inside this file as inside this file. Okay, however, they do not have the same size. Okay, so this one right here is about 144 kilobytes, which is like 14 kilobytes. Yeah, 144 bytes, which is about, that is 1.4 kilobytes if I'm not wrong. And this one is 8.86 kilobytes. It's the same data, but it's stored using different formats and they have different sizes. Okay, so this is widely used, especially in data analysis, and we can also try to use it inside our code. So I'm going to copy this file and I will copy it inside databases right here, and then right inside here I'm going to tell the AI agent, instead of hard coding these values right here, I want to use the data inside this. So I'll say I'll first copy this one, copy path, and then I'll come to the AI agent, and then I'll say instead of hard coding foods items, let's use the data inside that. Oh my goodness, where am I copying? Let's use inside the foods inside that. Below is the structure. Below is the structure of the data. So we are going to go into the CSV file. We'll copy this and we'll paste it here. We'll give it a few minutes to data analysis will not be on this course. It will be a separate course starting on 15th of May. So by the end of April, here is what you should know how to do. Number one, you should know how to work with a terminal. Number two, you should know how to create a front end and a back end application. You should know how to work with APIs. You should know the client server model. You should know everything about get, put, post, patch. You should know everything about connecting the backend to the front end. All these things we've covered, and I've also on multiple occasions asked you guys to try and find other material like tutorials, articles, and so on and so forth. So the AI agent has done its thing, so let's confirm. So now it has deleted this hard-coded food here, so we are going to keep, then we come down here. So there is an addition here. define load food. So we are loading foods from the CSV, and we'll quickly go through this code and see what's happening there. No, design will be a separate course. Design will be a separate course. So let me just skip this. Also keep this one, and also keep this. So let's just quickly go through the code and understand what's happening. So before we read the CSV file, because we are importing it from another file which is not inside the main.py, we have to tell main.py exactly where the CSV file is. Let me zoom in. Like so. So we have to tell CSV where to get we have to tell main.py where to get the CSV file, and that is what we are doing here. Okay, that is what we are doing here. So first we create a function that will load the CSV file, and we provide the path, and the path is right here. So we are just telling it inside the same folder where we are, which is what you see by this, and this. We are saying inside the same folder where main.py is, go and find a file called foodsdb.csv. And then down here, we are starting with an empty list of foods, because when we are opening the file, we don't know how many foods are inside the file. So we start with an empty file, and then we create a function here that opens the file and it reads it. And then we have a for loop that will go through the entire items in the CSV as we see here. And then we are getting the name. If not row.get name, continue. So this means if there is no name in that row, we skip. And then we are getting the ingredients as well. And then we are appending. You see this was empty here, but we are appending. So we are adding whatever we find inside the CSV into this foods list right here. Okay, so if you don't know, if you can't figure out what's happening with your code, you can just copy paste it inside the AI agent, and ask it what is the purpose of this function, or take me through this function. And then our random function still remains the same. Yeah, and then right here we just run our code. So let's run our code and see what happens. So I'll say python main.py, and as you can see, we are generating three options, just the same way we are doing with the Chakula mobile app. We are generating three options. So we have Githeri, which is 50 shillings. We have Ugali, which is 20 shillings, and we have Rice, which is 100 shillings. But there's an issue. It's printing all the foods in our database. Let's go ahead and add anything. Let's see if our random function, it's okay, it's generating 3. You see this one here? We don't want 3, we just want 1. So I'll change this to 1 and run our code again. Yeah, now we have only 1. So let's run our code again. Now we have another one. So as you can see, they are different, but it's only one recommendation at a time. So now, what is the advantage of this? The advantage of this is what we call separation of concern. And I want you to write that somewhere. Separation of concern, which is very important. Before even we dive deeper into how separation of concern works at the data and the application layer, let's look at the separation of concern inside our code, okay? Right here, we have two functions. The first function its work is to load the CSV into the interpreter, okay? And then the second function is to now do the randomization, to generate a random meal. I could have gone ahead and said, I'll just put this inside this function, okay? I can go ahead and say, let me put this inside this function. But now you'll have one function that is doing a lot of things. One function that is loading the CSV, and it's also generating foods, which violates the separation of concern in good quality code or system design. So if, for example, we have a bug in loading the CSV, if our CSV is not being loaded into the interpreter, and we're working on this project, and there are like 5 people working on this project, you can be given that task of finding why the CSV is not being loaded to interpreter. And this is the function you'll focus on. Nothing else. You'll not care about this function. You will not care about this code right here. You'll only focus on this, and that is separation of concern. We will also look at how to put this inside a separate file, not inside main.py. And that is actually part of creating modules. So now the separation of concern here, you see, if I want to add foods to my database, I don't have to change this one. I have no business with this. If I want to change foods, I will change it right here. And that is the separation of concern I was talking about. So I can edit that, I can open that CSV file right here. Databases right here, CSV file, and I get my list of food, these ones right here. Okay, and I can add another food here. I'll say number 4 will be something like pizza, and pizza is common in, let's say, for example, Eldoret, and the pizza needs chicken, flour, and the price for pizza is let's say, for example, 4,000. That is abnormal, but just stay with me. So we'll save our file and we close it, and if you go to our code, you can see the update is reflected here. Okay, so we haven't touched the main.py, but look what happens if I try to generate meal. So I'll say generate again, and as you can see, it's generating pizza right here. So if you look at this schema or this architecture, there are 3 layers that are separate from each other. So I can work on the data layer without touching the business layer or the data manipulation layer. As well, I can work on the data presentation layer and never have to touch the data storage layer. And this is very important to understand, especially when we are collaborating. I'll say, for example, one person to handle the front end, the other person to handle the back end, and the other person to handle the database or the scheme or the whatever, and so on and so forth. However, we cannot work with, let's say, I want to generate a few records here. So, but first I want to see how long it takes our project to run. So I'll say import time. Is it time zone? Time zone. Okay. Why am I writing code? You can just come here and say add timing, so we see how long it takes to generate the foods. It's time zone, import time zone, and then time.now at the top, time.now at the bottom. I have forgotten how to import. And then while it does that, let's just copy this and we'll go to ChatGPT and ask it to give us more records. So I'll say ChatGPT right here. I'll say using the sample data below, generate 300 records. All right. So we will have 2 CSV files, and for this one I'm going to edit it inside VS Code. So we'll have foods DB, and we'll have another one here called foods DB version 2.csv. All right, and I'll go to ChatGPT, find out if it's done. How many windows do I have open? Okay. To keep readable, I've shown the pattern. Export all 300 rows. How about you generate 700 more records? So we'll use the 300 records and we'll just paste it inside version 2, like so. So let me just, oh my goodness, these are not 300 records. What did you do? Those are not 300 records. Anyway, we'll just find a way. All right, so here we have 50 records. As you can see, we have ID 1 to ID 50. These are 50 records. So let's go ahead and see if our timer is working. But remember, right here, we are only importing the foods DB. This one right here, foods DB. So let's run our code. And as you can see, that time, we can run it again. We can see that time. We can run it again. We can run it again. And as you can see, that is sort of, we are operating between 160 to 190. Let's try again. 160, 170, 162, 163. So we are operating between 160 to 100. So I can just copy this and I'll add it in a text document. So I'll open Notepad. So with 4 records, it's taking the system that much time, seconds. It's taking the system this much time to generate the food. So let me clear. Now we want to change from foods DB. We want to use 50 records and see if the time will change. So right here, instead of food DB, I'm going to say, oh my goodness, this is supposed to be foods. So this is foods DB version 2. Foods DB version 2. Now let's go ahead and see how much time this will take. So I'll just save and run. Run again, run again, run again, run again, run again. So it's taking between 300, an average of between 335 to up to this one, 624. So we'll say, so here I will say with 50 records, we are taking an average. Let's just do a random average because it's between 3 to 600. So we can say it's 4. For this one, I think 180 is a fair time. All right. Now here's an interesting question. We talk about big O notation. Can somebody tell me what is the I've forgotten. What is the time notation here? What is the time notation? Is it type notation? I can't remember. Now, as you think, let's go ahead and find out what if we use 300 records. What if we use 300 records? How much time will that take? So I'll go to this AI agent here and I'll say, I'll copy this. So I'll rename this to 50 records so that we can easily identify it. So this is 50 records and I will say foods DB, we want 300 records .csv, and we'll paste this here. So I want to ask this one to generate more data. Copy path. I think I will invoke Cloud Code for this one. Using the sample data in generate 250 more records, 250 more records to make it 300 records. Enter. So as you think about the time complexity, we can just have a brief breakdown of what's happening. So we let me just draw this, see if I can draw. Let me draw another one like so. So right here we have the time it takes to generate a meal, and we have the data that we are giving the system. And we've seen if we are at 50 records, for example, here we are at no, let me just use this. So if we are at 4 records as initially, the time it takes is about 300 milliseconds. So that is 300. Okay. And if you do an intersection here, it's right around this spot right there. Now, if you feed the system with 50 records, let me just move this to the side. If you feed the system 50 records, as shown here, it takes about 600. Is it 600? It takes about 400. So it takes about 400, somewhere around here, 400. Okay, so if you do an intersection, it's somewhere around here. Now let's go ahead and find out, if we feed the system 300 records, how much time will that take? Yellow. Well, Nico class. All right. So if we have 300 records, let's go ahead and change our file here, which is basically our database, to 300. All right, so if we change it to 300, let's go ahead and see what happens. Let's generate. We are at 900. Let's generate again. 900, 1000, 900, 800. I'm talking about these right here. You see it's 800. Okay, I'm ignoring these because it's just too much work for my brain to figure out what those are. So we can estimate an average of 900 here, because it's between 800 to 1000. So now let's go back to our, so if we feed the system 300 records right here, it takes the system a little bit longer. So we are at 900 seconds. So time in seconds, and then this is just data in record. So if we do an intersection of these and the data, we are coming to, I think, somewhere around here. So if you draw a line, you can see it's going like this, okay? And this is what you call linear time, okay? Linear time means the time it takes to perform a specific task increases as your data increases. Do you guys now, understand what linear time is? It's linear, like the more you feed, the more you add data, the longer it takes for your project to perform these calculations. Now, here is a simple question. Right now, we are working with 300 records, and as you can see, it's taking how long? Now, let's get the accurate time. So let's say, for example, this one right here. All right, so we'll close this, and we'll go to ChatGPT. This is how lazy I've become, by the way. We'll say it takes this much time for a system to generate food from 300 records. All right. Now this is just an like an example of what you would encounter in the real world. So you can think of this like, for example, M-Pesa users. Safaricom claims they have 50 million users, and you would imagine for you to make a transaction, the system has to do some calculations in the background. Okay, so we can say how much time will 50 million records take. We can just do that. 300 records is that time, blah blah. 50 million records, it will take around 141 seconds. Okay, so if we are using a CSV, if M-Pesa was using a CSV, it will take around 150 seconds for you to just complete a simple M-Pesa transaction. Now let's look at what that is in minutes, because sometimes calculating in minutes is way easier. So you'll open the calculator here and say 150 divided by 60. Divided by 60. As you can see, it will take you 2 minutes to complete a transaction, which is not logical. Okay, a transaction has to be completed in milliseconds, like you're paying pub, you're done, less than a second. But right now, if we use a CSV, it will take that much time. So this is why we cannot use CSV to store our data in production systems, because it does not scale, number one, and it's just not efficient to query. You cannot query it efficiently. So that brings us to now databases or database management systems. So database management systems, they are just like extra services you add to your application that make the querying a little bit faster and easier. So databases can be categorized in two variants. We have SQL and we have NoSQL. So we will look at what these two mean as we continue, but for now, just know databases can be classified like this. Depending on the type of application you're building, I mean, like the choice depends on the type of the application you're building. So under SQL, we have services, we have databases like PostgreSQL, SQL, we have MySQL, we have MS SQL, which is Microsoft SQL Server, and under NoSQL we have something like MongoDB. We have something like CouchDB. Who would even call a database CouchDB? As well, under SQL we have something like SQLite. All right, we have something like SQLite. All right, I'll give you guys a second to write this down. It's very important. We are now sinking deeper into databases. So I'll give you guys a second to write this down. Ask any questions before we begin, because the next session will be very heavy and I'll need you to pay attention, put all distractions aside and be 100% attentive. So write that down. If you have any questions or if you've joined late, you can post your question in the chats. I will answer as I have a cup of coffee and then we can continue. How is it a problem? What do you mean it's not working? Okay, Ati, when you open it, what do you see? Do you see an error? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Inasemaje? Eh, eh. Sijakuelewa. I think unaongelea kwa composition. Hiyo will have to connect ndio niangalie. So uko nyumbani? Umefika home? Aya, sawa. Let me get acha nimalizane na hii class and then I will connect niangalie. All right. All right, shall we proceed? Ooh, it's feeling hot. I feel like taking off my t-shirt. Let me check it. All right, I think we can continue now. I am receiving no questions, so I'm hoping we are at par. Now, the easiest database there is to practice with is this thing called SQLite 3, and this is what you're going to start with. So, inside VS Code, but first, before you jump into VS Code and ask AI to help you, you can just go to the browser and type SQLite 3 and go to the website and just try to have a look at, you know, what it's all about. Now, if there are any documentations in tech that, you know, they're very complex to work with, it's the databases documentation. But you can go to the documentation bit and have a look at, you know, overview, documents, programming interfaces, blah, 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 blah. Now, something you should note, SQLite 3 is very common, okay? In your phone right now, almost 50% of apps you're using use SQLite 3. Let me just try and search on mine. SQLite. .db. So as you can see, all those options you see there, this is all SQLite 3, okay? Almost, let me see if I can find one that I can, like for example, WhatsApp uses SQLite 3 to store data on your phone. That's why if you lose your phone and you're not backing up your data to the cloud, your WhatsApp chats disappear. It's because the SQLite 3 data on your phone, you know, has been deleted. So as you can see here, we have chat settings backup. You see that chat settings backup? That's the SQLite 3 data that stores your chat settings. So I can just say details, and if I go to details, I can see where WhatsApp is storing that data. All right, so if I dare delete that file, that means all my WhatsApp settings will disappear. Okay, so it's a funny way to mess with somebody. Consequently, if somebody copies that file from your phone, there's how they can do, you know, some level of reverse engineering and, you know, get access to all your chats. Now, this course is self-taught computer science, so we'll talk about everything. We'll cover everything, even cybersecurity. But anyway, so we'll put this aside for now. You can go through it when you have time. But we'll go to you know, let me just use Cloud Code, and I will say instead of using this CSV file right here, copy path, we'll add it here, and then you'll say let's use SQLite 3 and also copy the data to SQLite 3, and I hit enter. So I want you to pay attention to what will change. The code that, oh, I'm using Cloud Code, it doesn't show the code it is. Okay, it's okay. We'll try and see what changes Cloud Code will do to integrate SQLite into our project. So this is the part where you need to pay really close attention. What is Mo saying? All right, so already here it shows you what it's going to change, and I think this is inside the main.py. It's going to import SQLite 3 right at the top here, and it's going to get rid of this path because we are no longer using CSV. And then right here we are going to connect to the database, and then after we've connected to the database, we are going to execute some queries, and we'll look at this in a second. And then once we execute some queries, the rest of the logic pretty much remains the same. So just say yes, allow all these edits. Databases main.py, it's trying to run the code for me. Why are you running the code for me? But it's okay, go ahead and run. All right, so All 300 rows were imported into foods DB. Here is what changed. Blah 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 blah. Now let's go ahead and look at this foods DB. So there is something here that we did not create. We did not create this thing right here, but it's added. So this is now our SQLite 3 database. This is an actual database, and you can install a tool to browse the database. So I'm just going to look for an extension, SQLite. Oh, this is how you install extensions on VS Code. Extensions just help you work with, your project better. Like for example, here I have this database. I have this SQLite 3 database, but when I click on it, I'm getting this error. So I need an extension that can open that database. So I'll go to this extension icon here, and I'll look for the extension. I can't remember how it looks like, but let me just try and guess. Was it this one? So I look at the rating and the downloads to see if I don't think it's that one. Why does this have a thing here? Pre-release version. Okay, this has 3 million downloads. Yeah, I think this is what I'm looking for. So I'll just say install trust publisher. Yeah, once that is done, I'm going to go back to my files, and now when I click on the foods DB, I can see now our data is populated. So again, it looks pretty much like CSV and Excel, whereby we have columns, we have rows, and we have the actual data inside the rows. So we have these, that, and all these are 300 records as shown here. So we have 300 records. Now let's go ahead and run our code, see what happens. Main.py, and we are getting Githeri central beans generated, one foods in. Now as you can see here, it's taking even longer. It's taking longer than CSV to generate the food, which actually beats the purpose of moving to a database. But we look at all that as you continue. Now the time is half. If you run it again, the time is half. If you run it again, so as you can see, we went from 5,000 to 1,000 right here, to 1,800. Let's just clear. So now here we've just learned how to connect to an SQLite 3 database, and we've replaced, so we don't need this because we've replaced them with an actual database. So move to recycle bin. Let's go to main.py. We don't need this, so we'll delete it. What else don't we need? Let's just see. Import CSV, load foods. We don't need this. Import CSV, we don't need it. What else? We don't need this because we are not importing anything. We're only importing the foods DB, the SQLite 3 database. And let's see. Now we need to update our code to only work with the database. Right now it's working with both the database and the CSV. So let's see what we can change. So for row count, we are initializing with 0 here, and then we are importing CSV. Connection, get connection, init db, only import if the table is empty. Row count, select rows, blah blah. If row count is 0, imported, import CSV. Oh my goodness, why are we okay? Purge the project of CSV. We don't use it anymore. Why are you passing connection here if we're importing CSV? My goodness. All right, so while it does its thing, Oh my goodness, I was struggling to switch on the fan. Anyway, so where are we? So we've removed the CSV. Let's go ahead and run our code. Now it's taking a little bit less time, not 5,000 as below. So we have 2,000, we have 1,000, we have 2,000, and so on and so forth. So now that is if we are connected to SQLite 3. There are a few things here that might be confusing. There is this thing right here, create whatever, and there is also this one right here, which can be a little bit confusing. So let's take a step back and look at what those are. So when you're working with an actual database, especially something like an SQL database, you query the data in a different format. Now remember I told you there's separation of concern. Somebody can work on the database and somebody else can work on the backend, and they don't have to sort of like, get in each other's way. So for now, we have looked at SQLite 3, but let's look at MySQL. Let's install MySQL locally and try to work with it locally. Now, there are a few ways you can do that. Number one, you can use a tool called Gemini CLI, and I don't have it. So I'll go to the browser and I'll search Gemini CLI. So to install it, I'll copy this thing right here, and then I'll go back to my terminal. Let me just close this. I'll go back to my terminal and I'll paste that. Enter. Oh, and by the way, I am actually teaching my brother how to do motion graphics. Motion graphics is how to do things like, let me see if I can show you guys. Motion graphics. I'm looking for motion graphics. Nope. Let me see if I can get something here. Nope. Okay, Vox animations. Vox animations. I'm not going to play it because YouTube has a tendency of flagging videos. But you see what's happening here? This is called motion graphics. You see that? Do you see that? That. Like when you're watching a video and then you see something being circled or something moving around, or something scaling, like right here, this other one. Why are you not playing? That is too long. These are called motion graphics. It's what I'm teaching my brother how to do. So if you're interested, you can reach out. I'll also give you directions on how to learn motion graphics. Like I said, we are in an age where you need to learn everything you can get your hands on. Nobody should tell you that right now you should specialize. No. You need to learn how to code. You need to learn how to deploy applications. You need to learn how to do graphic design. You need to learn how to do motion graphics. You need to learn how to shoot videos and take pictures, and edit photos and all that. Learn everything. So let's see. Gemini seems to be installed. So we are just going to say Gemini. Trust folder body. Then you have to sign in. So since probably almost everybody has a Gmail account, so you just say sign in with Gmail. It's way easier. Continue. Yeah, authentication successful. So we'll just go back to the terminal. Press R to restart or escape to choose a different authentication method. So we'll just say R, restart. But I've pressed R. All right, so once Gemini is installed, now this is Gemini CLI. It's not Gemini itself. This is what we call Gemini CLI. Gemini CLI is like Gemini, but for developers. So it works locally on your terminal. So I can just talk with the AI agent here. Now, to install and configure MySQL, you can go to the browser and just type MySQL. And right now, I hope you guys are paying attention to the pattern. First, we started by hard coding values inside our data, inside our code. We had a dictionary here with foods. Then we moved to using a CSV. And then we figured CSV is not scalable. It doesn't, I think it has a maximum of how much data it can handle comfortably. And then now we move to SQLite 3 because it's easier to integrate. As you saw, SQLite 3 was just giving Cloud Code a single command, and our project was working with SQLite 3. Now we are moving to an even more advanced database management system, or a database called MySQL. And you can go ahead and install MySQL from from their website. So you can just go to documentation and download and whatnot. I think there is a Windows installer somewhere, but I mean, AI is here, so why go through all that trouble? So I'm going to go to Gemini and tell it install and configure MySQL database. Create a database called Chakula with the credentials Chakula, password Chakula, Chakula, and create this sample data. I have not given it the sample data. I have just typed. Anyway, it's okay. So you can go through. You can just go through what it does. So here it's saying action required shell MySQL blah blah. So basically, what Gemini is trying to do here, it's trying to see if we already have MySQL installed on our computer, and I mean, we don't have it. You can try that on a separate terminal. You can go on a separate terminal and say MySQL, and again, we don't have it. So just go back here, say allow once. I did not give you the sample data, but it's okay. So again, it's running this command. I'll check if Choco is installed, which would allow me to install MySQL as requested. Choco is not installed, so go ahead and install it. Again, winget, check if it's installed. So sometimes, I mean, there are different ways, to accomplishing anything. Okay, so if you want to install MySQL, the database management system, you can just use an AI agent like Gemini and have it install it for you. Number two, you can use the official documentation. Which basically you should use the official documentation if you have enough time on your hands, because as you can see, it's pretty complex. You don't know what to start. You don't know where to start. There's the reference manual. There's the release notes. There's all these things here. Very confusing. That is why most people use other tutorials. So you can just go to the browser and type how to install and configure MySQL on Windows. So if you're using Linux, you can say Linux. If you're using Windows, you can just say Windows. And then you get the guide. So you can look for an article that explains it. So this is from MySQL themselves. So you can click on it. Yeah, and silent installation, use standard blah blah blah, additional installation information blah blah, more confusion. So we can just go back. There is an article from Reddit. And then there's this one from Geeks for Geeks. So let's try that. And yeah, so they have included the system requirements. They've asked you to download and install MySQL right here. So visit the official website. So as you can see, this is a little bit more detailed, more to the point, especially for a beginner. So I would recommend you actually use this if you want to install MySQL. But you can also use Gemini. When get search MySQL, say yes. Okay, this is getting confusing, so we'll just use the Geeks for Geeks tutorial because now it's talking about Docker, which is way ahead of where we are right now in our course. So let's install and configure MySQL using the Geeks for Geeks guide. So I'm going to go to another terminal and I'll just put it on the side here, and I'll put the guide to the side here, like so. So I'll also do this. Okay, so you can read all this information if you want. There's the system requirements right here. There's steps to download. So visit the official MySQL website. That is the first step. Click on first download button. So we are looking for MySQL installer 8.0.35. So MySQL installer. So we can go to MySQL website. And you're looking for the installer. So let's look for the installer. Let's try this MySQL server. Reference manual, and then there's installing right here. There's installing on Windows right here, and we want to download. Okay, where the heck is the download? MySQL is available for Microsoft Windows 64 systems only. For supported Windows platform information, see that. There are several methods to installing MySQL on Microsoft Windows. The MSI, the standard binary distribution package, as a compressed file containing all of the necessary files that you unpack, source files, compile MySQL yourself, or blah, blah, or all right, so we have this Microsoft Download Center. MySQL 8.4 server requires the blah, blah user system before installing. The package is available at, let's try and see. Okay, this is the package for Microsoft Visual C++, not the MySQL itself. Yeah, as I thought. The simplest and recommended method is to download the MSI and let it install MySQL server, and then use MySQL configurator. It installs to configure MySQL. So download the MSI from here. As you can see, you had to read a lot of things just to find the installation package. So we'll go ahead and open that installer. So there's the download now. So we'll click on it. MySQL Enterprise Edition downloads. We don't want Enterprise Edition. We want Community. Don't you guys have a Community version? My goodness. Let's see. It's actually been a while since I used MySQL. I don't even know if they have a Community version. By the way, this is Oracle. So if you're wondering what Oracle does, this is what they do. So let's just go ahead and download this one. So it's for Windows. And then download this thing right here. I have received blah blah blah. Download. Oh my goodness, why do I have to sign up? Let's see. You guys are serious. I have to sign up. Can't even remember my password for this website. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is just too much work. Okay, so now somebody was asking the other day, why would somebody choose one framework over the other? And it's because of things like this. You see, I'm trying to set up a database locally, and they are giving me a headache to set it up locally. If I use the AI agent to do it, it's now pulling in other tools that I do not need, like this Docker here. I don't need it for this particular use case. So what do I do? I shift to another database that is way easier to work with. And the database that is way easier to work with is PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL is just like MySQL, but as you can see, MySQL is owned by Oracle, and it's not free if I'm not wrong. But Postgres is free. So let's just forget about MySQL and try Postgres. So I'll do Postgres SQL, and let's see if this one will be different. So again, as you can see, Postgres is very straightforward. You just open the website and right away it takes you to the installer. So the installer is right here. So certified by EDB for all supported Postgres versions. So I will download this installer right here. And then I'll pick the Windows version. So I'm on Windows, and I want the 18.3 version. So this one right here. All right, so that is done. Now, as you can see, it's showing +1 here because I have already downloaded the PostgreSQL and installed it. But it's pretty straightforward. Once you're done, just double click on the installer and install it on your machine. So once you have installed it, you now have to connect to the database. When we were working with CSV and Excel, all we had to do was come here and open this CSV and Excel. But when you're working with an actual database, you operate it a little bit differently. Okay, so first things first, I want to connect to the database and find my database credentials. I can try and reuse credentials I had created earlier, but that will be too much work. So after you've installed the database, the easiest way there is to interact with your database is using another graphical tool to do that. Now the graphical tool I use is called pgadmin. pgadmin, where's pgadmin? This one right here. Again, pgadmin, you can just go to your browser, type pgadmin, pgadmin. My internet. So yeah, pgadmin is just like any other software you downloaded and install on your computer. So just download it and install it. Now once you install pgadmin, when you open it, this is what you'll see. Okay, and you're saying error while opening PSQL tool, server is not connected. So let's go to servers, and as you can see here, we have a couple of servers. So we have Mobi Chakula, we have this Postgres SQL 18. So in your case, this is what you will see. Postgres SQL 18, this one right here. So let's go ahead and open it. And once you open it, this is what it shows. So it shows you have databases here, and you have login and users here. So let's create another user here. So we'll do create login group, and then we'll say foods, or we'll just say food. So that will be the name of that user. We'll go ahead and give it a password, food, no expiry, everything else we'll keep it as it is, and then we'll say save. So once that is done, we need why is it a group? That's weird. So we need an actual database. So right now inside our database we have Chakula and we have Postgres. So we'll right click on databases and say create database, and say we want to create a database called foods. And this database will be owned by this user called food. And then we'll say save. I don't know why this user is reading as a group. Let me just see. Create login and user group. So I came here. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So Now, whatever it is we are doing right now, we are using the graphical user interface. And the graphical user interface is not always intuitive, and it doesn't give you full control over what you're trying to do. That is where we bring in another language sort of called SQL. Now, SQL is, you remember, like Python, print, blah, blah, blah. It's just another language on its own. But it's a language we use to interact with databases. That is what you saw right here. This is what you call SQL. It's what we use to interact with the database. So now here I'm going to open Gemini. Sorry, not Gemini. I'm going to open Cloud Code, and I'm going to open my pgadmin. All right. So once I open pgadmin, I'm going to say, I'm going to click on this Foods database, and then I'll scroll down and open this PSQL tool. So once you open PSQL tool, it gives you an interface where you can type your SQL commands, or where you can interact with the database. Okay, so I'll open a Cloud Code, and I will copy my sample data. Where was the sample data? Where? I think instead of using self-taught foods db csv, oh my goodness, I deleted my database. Why did I do that? Let me do Control Z. Okay, yeah, this one right here. So I'll go to Cloud Code. Again, I'm not showing you how to do all these things from scratch, because it does not make any sense given that we have AI tools that can do that for you. So I'll just go to Gemini and say, write an SQL to create the columns inside a database named foods, and add this sample data. We'll do that. We'll hit enter. And it will give you the SQL command. Let's just wait for it to finish. 300 records. Let me see if I can remember the commands. Did not find any relations. D, T. You can actually play around here and see what happens. Yeah, it's taking ages. So let's just minimize this. So far we have Chakula database, we have foods, and we have Postgres. For now, we are only interested with the foods database. And as you can see here, it shows you which database is selected. So if I go to Chakula and I say open PSQL tool right here, it will show that I'm inside the database called Chakula right here. So let's go back to PSQL tool, and this command is not complete, is it? So I'll just copy this, I'll paste it here, and I'll hit enter. So once you hit enter, it shows insert 0300. Let's just scroll to the top. Now inside this database called foods, we want to confirm if this data indeed was added to the database. So we'll go back to the foods database right here, and then you go to schema, and then you go to public, and then you go to tables, and then you have the foods database here, the foods table, sorry. So we'll right click on it and say view all rows, and as you can see, all the data was added into the database as shown here. Now what you're looking at right here is what we call the entire collection of data is called a schema. A schema is basically the collection of tables, columns, what is related to what. We'll get back, we'll look at relations maybe later, but that is just what we call a schema. Now Postgres can be very overwhelming at first when you look at it. No, not Postgres, pgadmin. It can be a little bit overwhelming when you look at it the first time, but just try expand all these options, try and see what is inside what, and so on and so forth. Now at the top here, once you select the table, at the top here, you see this command here. This command is what was used to display this data right here, okay? If I want to manipulate this data and, if I want to focus on, if I want to find out what food is at index 80, I'll have to scroll and find index 80 and see, where is index 80, and see, oh, index 80 there is pizza. But if, like I said, there is 50 million records, you cannot scroll through 50 million records. So you can just use a query to get the data that you want. So right here, I will say, continue. So select star means select all. From public foods, we are selecting everything from the foods table, and then we are ordering by ID, and the order should be ascending. We can change this to descending, like so, and we hit enter, and as you can see, it's in descending order, ordered by the ID. But in our case, we only are interested in what is at position at index 80. So here I can say select all from public foods where ID is 80, and I'll run my query. And as you can see, I'm only getting the food at index 80. I can even try and use the name. For example, I can say select all where name is pizza. Now notice what will happen here. There's a bug here. Notice what will happen. It says column pizza does not exist. Okay, it's because remember strings. When we are talking about data types in Python, we said a string has to be in quotation marks. Now in Postgres or in SQL, we use that quotation mark, okay, the single quotation mark. So let's hit our code again, and as you can see, it's showing pizza, all these records for pizza, and that's it. No other record is shown. Okay, so each column in a database has a data type, okay, the type that identifies that data. So for price, it's a numeric, it's like an integer. For ingredients, it's like a character, and since it's like a list, we have this character varying thing here. Again, for region, it's character varying. Again, for name, the same, and ID is just an integer. So these are what we call data types in SQL. We can do other things. For example, if we don't want to list all these columns, we are only interested, we only want the name and the price. All you need to do is, instead of saying select all here, because the select all here means select all columns, we can just say we want the name column and the price column, like so. So we hit our code again, and as you can see, there's only 2 columns we are getting. But we are working with the database directly. How can we connect to this database from our Python code? Now let's see how we can do that. So number one, we need to find the connection details, because a database is a service that runs on your computer, but to connect to it using an from a programming language, you need 2 things. Number one, you need the URL. Number 2, you need the username, and number 3, you need the password. So let's try and get the URL, username, and password. So at the top here, we can just say properties, and then we go to definition. Wait, no, I'm in the wrong thing. It's supposed to be databases. It's supposed to be this instance. So I'll right click on this. I'll say properties, and then I'll go to connection, and then I can see the URL of our database is localhost, and the port is 5432. The username is Postgres, and the password is hidden. However, I also have another user called Chakula with the password Chakula, and that is what I'm going to use. So I will get these connection credentials. I'll go to my code, and then I'll tell Cloud Code. Let me just expand this. I'll say, instead of using SQLite, instead of using this, let's shift to PostgreSQL. The connection details are as below. So ni localhost, the port was 5432, the user was Chakula, The password is chakula. So when you are installing Postgres, you'll be asked to provide the username and password that will be used to connect. So just write those credentials down, because you will need them later on. Yeah, this task of course is heavy. Moving from SQLite 3 to Postgres is not easy, but let's see what the agent does. Oh, Gineb, to connect to SQLite 3 from your code, you just need to load the SQLite database, the file. You see this footsdb here. It's our SQLite 3 database. So this one right here is what we are loading. Okay, so you can say when you're using SQLite 3 and you're using CSV, you have to load the file, the database file. But you'll see how different that is if you're using Postgres. Guys, there's somebody has written an interesting story on the story app, and I think you all should go and read that story. Let me share the link in the chats. Oh, there is also another story here I'm seeing. Looks interesting. Story time. What I Thought I Felt, written by Queen Tata, and it's 300 words. When Zara's mom remarried, she didn't expect much to change. A new house, a new man in her mom's life, and his son Noah. Oh, Noah is my brother's name. At first, everything felt awkward. They weren't close, just two teenagers sharing a hallway and occasionally eating dinner in silence. So let's unlock this. This looks like an interesting story. I'll read all this later. Okay, there are some interesting stories here. This will be the most entertaining sporting event in Kenya. Okay, it wasn't as entertaining. The distance between us. Daniel had known Marcus for over 20 years. They had built their lives side by side. Okay, I'll also read this one. Let me unlock it first. I'll read this one later. All right, so so what has changed? All 300 rows are now in PostgreSQL. Here's what has changed. So we have imported this thing called PsychoPG to replace SQLite using blah blah on conflict blah blah. Now that we have moved to Postgres, we need to get rid of SQLite. Get rid of a SQLite code. I am so tired to draft that prompt, so let me just use that. The file is already clean. What do you mean is already clean? And I have here, I have you importing. Anyway, we'll get back to that later. Anyway, so quite a lot has happened in here. Number one, we have the database configuration, and this is where we provide the URL, the username, the password, and the actual database that we are interested in. Now pay attention. All these credentials are hard-coded inside the code, and this is a security vulnerability, especially for code that you're sharing on GitHub and whatnot. And in a future lesson, we'll look at how to store this in something called .csv. But Right now we've just hard coded, and then here we are creating a connection to the database. And then once we connect a connection, I don't know why we are creating all these, because we've already created them. And again, we're importing. Which model am I using? It's so dumb. All right, so we can just do this, copy path, paste here. We still have references to CSV and SQLite in this file. Remove them and strictly use PostgreSQL. So given how everything is moving fast in tech, you do not have time to lazy around. You do not have time. You have to learn as fast as the technology is evolving. And that is why when I'm doing these lessons, I try as much as possible to go past what we call the boilerplate. Like for example, I don't want to show you how to actually connect the database here and do all that thing, because I have the AI agent do that for me, and I can look at the code and see what has happened. Like for example, I saw the code and I noticed it had redundant code that was referencing the CSV, which we moved away from. So I gave it a command to clean that file up, and I think it has done that. Again, like setting up the database. So if you are comfortable using Gemini CLI, you can just go ahead and use it. I don't know how far it will go, but you can go ahead and use it. You can read articles of how to set up Postgres locally on your computer. I think I'll write. What I'll write? Oh my goodness. I'll write an article, or I'll write a guide on how to set up Postgres locally on your computer after this class. But anyway, let's test. Let's see if the integration worked. So I'll say main.py, and we can see generated food, blah, blah, blah. We can try again, and try again, like so, like so, like so. So right now we are connected to Postgres. Now we are not connected to CSV. We are not using SQLite 3. We are connected to Postgres. Yeah, and that's basically about it. That's all there is to learn at this particular time about databases. So just remember, the key takeaway from this session is that in software we have what we call separation of concern, whereby each module in your software can be manipulated independently without affecting the other. So we can change our database without affecting our application or our backend. The same, we can change up the color of a button in the front end without affecting our backend or without affecting our database. So that is the separation of concern. You also need to be able to download and configure Postgres and connect to it, and take the connection details and connect to that Postgres from your code. I'm going to do a write-up. I think I have a draft somewhere on Soma Stories. I'll finalize on it and share with you guys so that you can follow it step by step. Yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, do post in the help channel. What else is there? I'm forgetting. Oh, nothing. I'll see you in the next call, in the next class. We will have office hours on Monday, where I will take you guys through how I deployed the backend for Chakula. It will be an introduction to cloud computing, which will be on Wednesday. Yeah, I do encourage you to come and learn. Anyway, that's it. I have to go and eat. I'm hungry as hell. Bye. Oh my goodness, why am I okay?